Hello, my name is Emily Husel, and I'm going to be explaining a little bit about my practicum at the centralized housing intake process, what that is, the challenges and difficulties, successes and achievements, as well as other things that I've learned so far. So, what is the CHIP? CHIP acts as a means of connection between 10 partnering agencies. Individuals who access CHIP are actively experiencing homelessness in the city and utilize CHIP as a means to tell their story one time to one person and find supports that are appropriate for their needs. The first category of agencies is rapid rehousing, Housing First. So those agencies that are involved are Street Culture's Y Shore program, the YWCA Outreach, Sex Workers Advocacy Program, Carmichael Outreach, North Central Family Center, Ritzis, and Phoenix Homes. The diversion services that are involved with CHIP are Sophia House, Salvation Army, Newoyotina Friendship Center. So each of these agencies utilize a different means of housing and take on referrals depending on their needs that they can provide supports for those people. So the centralized housing intake process follows an intake process that identifies the intensity of an individual or family's needs. So any age or gender can access the CHIP program. The only requirement is that the individual is experiencing homelessness. CHIP utilizes a SPDAT, which is a tool to assess the intensity of the needs in relation to housing, and there are 15 domains that are examined throughout the intake process. So those 15 domains are mental health and wellness and cognitive functioning, physical health and wellness, medication, substance use, abuse and trauma, risk of personal harm to self or to others, involvement in high risk or exploitive situations, interactions with emergency services, legal issues, managing tenancy, personal administration and money management, social relationships and networks, self-care and daily living skills, meaningful daily activity, and the last one is history of housing and homelessness. So the CHIP program also manages the by name list of all individuals that report as being homeless. So this list is basically just categorizing each person who has completed an assessment onto this list by a priority base to ensure that there's no bias in housing. So the next person that has the highest needs will be housed. It's not a matter of their reputation in the community. It's solely based off of their needs. And this is determined by the scores on their SPDAT, which determine their place on the list. So anyone scoring a 0 to 19, they don't need any housing intervention. They will be able to exit homelessness with very minimal supports. That could be just rides to apartment viewings, maybe a phone or a computer to be able to access means of communication with a landlord, so very minimal intervention. Anyone scoring a 20 to a 34 is eligible for rapid rehousing, which are those 9 other agencies. And then 35 to 60 are eligible for Housing First, which is with the Phoenix Homes program. And individuals mostly score between that 35 to 60 range, and sometimes just because there are not enough supports for people who have those high needs, other agencies will take on individuals who are scoring a little bit higher than what they normally would take on. So other things that CHIP does is refers individuals to the most appropriate agency for housing and supports. We also meet every 2 weeks with the 10 agencies to discuss potential referrals, challenges, and successes, and kind of lean on each other to work through these different barriers that we come up against. And then also guide people through the process of getting on assistance. So, making phone calls, filling out forms, sending in documents, and just being a support for them because that process to get on assistance is long and defeating to a lot of people. So, just having a person there with them throughout that um, time is very helpful for them. Some difficulties and challenges throughout this practicum placement have been not enough resources and programs. So that housing list is very long of people who are waiting for supports, and there just isn't enough programming in the city to accommodate everyone's needs. And the programs that are currently active are understaffed and underfunded, so they are stretching themselves really thin and aren't able to take on any more than what they currently are, which means that there's no one leaving homelessness right now. It's just a kind of a waiting game. Another challenge is that many individuals will never get off of this housing list due to their high needs. There's no permanent supportive housing in Regina, which is where a lot of these individuals would fall into, where their needs would be met with permanent supportive housing. But because there's nothing like that in Regina right now, they are waiting on this list for sometimes 5 years. So, really difficult part of the housing process. Another issue or challenge is removing my heart from the job. It's really easy to feel empathy for every person who's experiencing homelessness because you know that they're facing challenges in their daily life, and it's hard to remove your heart from each of those interactions and to focus on just the assessment or just the aspect of finding them housing because you do have that emotional pull. So that is definitely a challenge. Another would be ensuring individuals actually show up for their assessment. So when someone is experiencing homelessness, they often don't have phones or a calendar or an alarm clock to wake them up. So sometimes they'll book in to come and do an assessment and then they don't show up or we can't find them. And that's a really big barrier. Another would be communicating to people that housing is not guaranteed. So that's always the first thing we tell people, that housing is not guaranteed. It is possible, but just due to the lack of resources, it is not going to happen in an instant. So sometimes people have addictions or mental health or cognitive delays that kind of stop them from fully understanding what that means, and they expect after they've done the assessment that they will get housed right away, which is not the reality. And the last difficulty or challenge is just feeling helpless in what I can do for people because of all the barriers that are in place. Feeling really defeated at the end of the day sometimes is happening, but then I look at my successes and that really helps me kind of keep pushing forward. And on that note, my successes and achievements. One is giving people a space to be heard. And again, like the reason CHIP was kind of created was to stop people from having to be re-traumatized by sharing their stories of homelessness and what brought them into homelessness over and over with all these 10 housing agencies. So this is like a one-stop place where they can tell their story one time, and then the work is on us to refer them to the appropriate agencies. Another success is learning my limitations and strengths. So I know that this is not work that I would like to do long term. I really enjoy work where I get to work alongside people through their journeys for any given length of time. And when I'm only having 45 minutes with individuals that I'm assessing, I find it hard because I might never see that person again. So that's really hard, and I know that that's not where I would be happy long-term working. So that's something that I'm glad to figure out now versus down the road. Another success is that I am constantly learning from the individuals I assess. I'm constantly readjusting my biases and realizing that things aren't always as they seem, or I can't assume anything. Uh, so yeah, I'm just constantly learning, and I'm really grateful that people feel comfortable enough to be sharing their stories with me. And another success is seeing the process actually work. So I was able last week to house my first individual, and that was a really great feeling to see it through and kind of come full circle and um, see the process work for someone. And new understandings and experiences. So some new understandings I have are that homelessness and the cause of such is very misunderstood. We often assume that trauma is related to someone being homeless, but individuals like self awareness or self interpretation of that can be very different. Another is that homelessness does not mean that people are without happiness. So, in that assessment, it asks daily fulfillment and um, if people are feeling happy and fulfilled when they wake up. And I've had a lot of individuals tell me that they do feel happy and fulfilled, even if it's just by going out and picking cans or what have you. That's where they get their fulfillment. And even though it might not be something that I would deem as fulfilling in my own personal circumstance, for that person, it is what is giving them happiness. And so that's definitely a bias that I've had to um, challenge. Another new understanding is that, like I mentioned, trauma can be interpreted differently by each individual. And again, that was something that I, going into my practicum, assumed that um, trauma was interpreted by everyone the same, that it was a result of a negative experience and then it led to people being homeless. But that's actually not um, a kind of definitive across the board situation for everyone. So that's been really interesting to hear people's perspectives on their own trauma. And another understanding is that greater systems such as social assistance, affordable housing, and shelters create barriers that often keep people in homelessness. So these barriers put up different walls that people have to push through in order to leave homelessness, but each of them, um, it's like a spider web that they're all interconnected and they all keep people in homelessness for lengths of time that are unacceptable. But again, just the reality of how our systems work right now. So, yeah, that is my presentation. Thank you for listening. And I look forward to completing the rest of my practicum and gaining more perspectives and understandings throughout. Thank you.